Hello, friends. I heard that you are interested in getting some tips on purchasing fabrics and looking for fabrics for the project that we'll be making in Santa Fe at the Madeline Island School West workshops in April. So I wanted to give you a couple of tips in particular about buying bilaterally symmetrical fabrics, because this is going to make the difference into whether or not your project goes easily or you struggle a little bit with it. So the first thing to know is, let's talk about what bilaterally symmetrical fabrics are. They are, bilateral means two sides. So for example, in this fabric here, there's an invisible line that goes right down the center of this repeat here, and it also goes down the center of this repeat here. And those lines are repeated throughout the bolt and the repeat of the fabric. And what that means is that everything on either side of this line is identical. So this little diamond shape is exactly the same on this side of that invisible line. It's the same distance. So it's the same here. The distance from the center of this repeat to that pink dot is the same as it is to that pink dot. So that will make all the difference in the world when you're doing these big kaleidoscope shapes and you want those repeats to butterfly. And so this fabric looks like this when it's on the bolt. But when you cut it up, it looks like this. And so you'll see that this kind of feather shape here was put together by the way we cut this edge detail here. And this shape also becomes this shape when you put the feathers on the outside of the curve. Now, you're going to have a variety of projects to choose from, but all of them will rely on this bilaterally symmetrical fabric. So let me give you another example. And this is from our Dreamy line. You don't have to use our fabrics, but we just happen to have designed some to make it easy. So there's also an invisible line here. Oh, actually not that one, right here. Right through the center here. And everything on either side is identical. So this one is not identical right here. You can see, because this star shape is not present over here. So you know that that is not one of the areas to repeat, but this one right here is. So you can see right down the center, everything is exactly the same for the entire width of the fabric on both sides. Now, another way to go, if you're interested in a different palette, is to look at some of the Ginny Beyer border prints. And these are more traditional fabrics, but they work in a couple of ways too, that you can see right here. There's an invisible line, and it's identical on both sides. And then also at various points horizontally, you can see that there's all the way across all of these stripes. And they do interesting things when fussy cut into this kaleidoscope technique as well. And you can see there's another one here, and there's another one here. So these border prints that you may have thought of as just being useful for borders are actually very helpful for this type of quilt as well. Now, if you're on Pinterest, you'll be able to find there a board that we've set up for bilaterally symmetrical fabrics, and you'll be able to see other examples of them as well. So this is a real critical part of doing these large-scale kaleidoscopes, is that you have this bilaterally symmetrical fabric. So I'm going to show you one that doesn't work, and the challenge is that sometimes people they want to use a fabric so much that they will try to tell themselves it will work, but then when they actually go to cut it up and put it together, it becomes problematic. So this is an example. This is a charming fabric from the K Facet Collective. However, here are a couple of clues that it's not bilaterally symmetrical. So if you look at this shape right here, those points wouldn't line up if you butterflied them. And also in some of the repeats on either side of this fan, you can see that they're different lengths here. And it might be white, white, blue, blue, and that looks symmetrical. But on some of the others, it's white on one side and blue on the other side. So if you were to try to cut down the center of this, you would find that you'd get a little zigzag here. These don't line up on both sides of that invisible line. And there is no point at which those shapes would line up. So it would look like a near miss if you tried to use this technique. If you try to use this technique with this fabric, you'd have a lot of points that don't match, and the illusion of the kaleidoscope would be broken. And more importantly, it will not be fun because you'll struggle with it. So you really want to look for, you want to look carefully at fabrics that have this bilateral repeat, and it's not relevant to a particular genre. Sometimes they're more traditional fabrics, sometimes they're more modern fabrics, but you want to be able to find that invisible line and make sure that the repeats and the motifs are identical on either side of that line, whether it's vertical, horizontal, or both. In this particular case, there's a couple of horizontal repeats as well. You can do it vertically and horizontally. So that should get you started, and check out the Modern Quilt Studio Pinterest board for bilaterally symmetrical fabrics. And I look forward to seeing you in April.